Welcome to Making Awesome, the new year, 2021. Let's hope it's a little bit better, right? Let's freaking get
A
to it.
little.
We have Tad and Thomas as always, but we have an interesting guest. We have Rafael or Rafi, depending on how you want to go for it. Not the
Yeah.
weird Rafi from the league, but maybe sometimes, but nonetheless, wonderful Rafi is here with us. He is a artist extraordinaire, here to talk about how he makes awesome. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Rafael, and yeah, thanks for inviting me, Grant. It's been impressive watching you grow your business and just seeing how far it's advanced over the years. We've known each other many years, and uh, I'm glad I got to meet you. I want to say that because we don't really get to talk that often anymore,
No, we don't.
and it's a good way to start 2021 after the year of 2020.
That's for sure.
So, yeah, no, I'm Rafael. I'm an artist, as Grant was saying, but I also own an art business representing famous Cuban artists because I'm Cuban. I was born in Cuba. I left Cuba when I was 5 and with my family, and I lived in Florida 21 years where I got to meet Grant, and that's all that matters about what happened in Florida. And
The rest stays in Florida.
the rest you can ask Florida man. But then I moved and a lot of stuff happened. And yeah, I guess we'll talk about that throughout the conversation.
Yeah, before we get too deep into it, as always, this episode is sponsored by 3D Musketeers. 3D Musketeers is your source for art to part, rapid prototyping, and product development. If you have an idea that you want to get off the ground, you can reach out to us. Links are in the description. So, Tad, Thomas, Rafi, how was your guys' New Year's? First off, right? It is on recording. It is January 2nd. So we are just into the new year here. So how was everyone's New Year's?
Oh, it was good. I mean, I stayed home with the people that I've been seeing for the past like 8 months. So I mean, it was like
As
pretty
you
much
should have.
we just bought a little extra alcohol and had a little bit more fun than a weekend night, because otherwise it was and then New Year rolled around and we were like, woo, go guys, we did it, I guess. It was good. We did some reflecting. We talked a lot about our years. We focused a lot on the positive parts because we figured everyone would say like, oh, did you guys like have a bad time with the pandemic? Because I did. And it's like, yeah, no shit,
That's gonna get
everyone
old
had a
real
bad
fast.
time. So yeah, we focused on talking about like, oh, there was good stuff. Like I still had, and I figured out like, wow, I actually had a lot of good stuff happen to me this year. It was just,
In between lots of
being-
bad.
yeah, I mean, granted, we all know it was rough, but there was lots of good stuff too. So it was a good time. Nice reflection.
Yeah. And Tad, I heard you didn't even make it till midnight. That's okay. It's okay.
No, we went to bed at 11.
You getting older. I understand.
Yeah, I'm getting up there
Not
in
eating.
years, so.
Not eating breakfast at 11 anymore.
No, I do. I ate mine at 10:30, so see? Almost.
He's a rebel.
I had breakfast at 8:30 in the morning. And it wasn't like oatmeal, okay?
It was like you cooked something, you like made
Bacon
like a
and
real
hard-boiled eggs.
Ooh.
What about you, Rafi? What'd you do? Did you do anything exciting at all?
Nothing, not much really. I just moved to Pittsburgh. Well, I say just, but it's going to be 2 years in this month. It feels like nothing has like no time has passed. But no, it's because of that I've live on my own, and my family's like 1,000 miles away. But technically 1,003 miles away.
The three
And
makes a big difference.
But
no one-
it does. It does.
No
when
one's
people
counting.
ask. Yeah. And no, most of my interactions with my family have been virtual, like through just Skype or whatever. And so it was a quiet night for New Year's for me. And I did, like Thomas was saying, I had time to reflect on what's happened over the year. For me, because I moved here with not really, I was starting from scratch. I got the opportunity to build everything from nothing. So unlike a lot of people, I'd say the only thing I had to lose was the chance to set up roots here. I could always go back to Florida,
Credit.
and yeah, and
Your credit
which
score.
yeah, well, my credit score. Um, what, yeah. So no, it's for me, it's been an extremely good year, and I feel bad saying that because I know a lot of people have gone through a lot of rough situations, and I've had my own rough, like with my family, where I just can't really see them. But other than that, I've been having an extremely good year, and I'm grateful to all the people that have really helped me make that happen through my business coming up and being able to start a new one as well, and like being able to become a homeowner for the first time. And
It's a big step.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's been really big. Uh, but yeah,
Well, let's
That
talk
makes
about
me.
that journey then. This whole journey through. You know, when I met you, you were, I don't want to say newer, but you were definitely newer than you are now into photography,
yeah,
and you were starting to talk about the art, but let's you are a maker in kind of a different sense than some of the other guests that we've had on here, right? Most of the guests that we
mhm.
bring on are like 3D printers and all that, and your experience with 3D printing is basically my business, I think,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly.
Um, it's so there's some difference there in your terms of making. So let's hear a little bit about your background from making, because you paint pictures with a camera,
hmm
which is really it's a really interesting way to describe it. So let's dive into that if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, yeah, it definitely is a process in making. But what I found, like as an artist, when people ask me, "Oh, are you a photographer and stuff?" At the beginning, when I first started photography, uh, I would definitely have called myself that, like a photographer, because that was mainly what I did, and I've done that now for 12 years. But now I don't really talk much as if I'm identifying as a photographer as much as I am as an artist that happens to use a camera as a tool. And the tool, like you guys, how you use 3D printers and then you build things on the computer, those are your tools. My tool for bringing things into reality is the camera. And when I go out into the world, what I feel is both the reason of what makes photography unique in a really interesting way, but also what makes it controversial as an art form of, like, a lot of people like to say, oh, photography is not really art or stuff like that. What makes it so interesting to me is that when I go out, I don't feel like I'm going out into the world making an image. I go out to discover an image. And like the analogy is like a hunter going out into the woods and looking carefully at their environment and trying to learn from it and see what clues they can gather. It's the same for me. It's the whole process of looking out there and looking at the patterns and how things interact with each other, and seeing like where the skill as a photographer comes in is figuring out how to frame, how to compose all that information into a space that limits everything else except for what is being captured. And like for me, like I said earlier, I've been doing photography for 12 years. And part of the reason why I started considering myself more as an artist is because I've been delving outside of that more ever since I moved here to Pittsburgh, uh, where here being on my own entirely and not really have like building my relationships from scratch since I came here not knowing anybody, it's kind of exposed me to an environment that nobody could have curated for me. I'm the only one that can curate it. And so being exposed to all this craziness and then me deciding what I'm going to frame into my life, it's really gotten me to understand how I work as an individual. And so now I've been actually getting into a lot of like drafting, drawing. And so Thomas has his fancy word for screen printing, and drafting is the fancy word for somebody that
Yep.
draws. Uh,
What's that fancy word again, Thomas?
Serigraphy.
yeah.
Sounds
I
made
so
up.
drink out of your coffee mug with a butt on it.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful ceramic. If you really want to get into it, this is such a nice piece of ceramics that was made from a gallery in town. It's so good,
Mm.
and it's a great little guy. But the glaze on the inside's really nice. I'll show that to you some later when the
When you
coffee's
finish.
not in here.
When the contents have gone down.
So I don't spill my coffee all over my computer.
That would be ill-advised and something that
Mm.
none of us
Yeah.
would like. And Thomas doesn't reference it all that often, but Rafi, all the art that you see behind him, he made, and I'm guessing the art that is next to you, you made.
Well, actually, this is a painting I brought in from Cuba because,
Mm.
like, one of the businesses that I was referencing that I started off. Well, to backtrack a little bit and then get to
Mhm.
that, like I mentioned earlier, I was born in Cuba, and growing up here in the States with like my family within that culture, I got to hear a lot of the stories. Like my family stories mostly revolved around what my family did in Cuba, obviously. And so on my dad's side, my dad was very involved with helping a lot of the like famous historical artists of the country do their work. And he was kind of like their manager. And he worked with very famous figures, and when he decided to leave Cuba, he lost a lot of those contacts because he had to start from nothing. For him, it was even more difficult because I was raised into this culture and I knew how to speak English clearly. He didn't know the language, he didn't know the culture, even the differences of how money is run or used. The concept of money is different here than it is in a country like Cuba. And so most of the stories that I grew up with were surrounded by the like me realizing that um, my dad was talking about this job that he used to do, this thing that he loved passionately, like it would vibrate off of him, that he used to do. And so that always stuck with me. And I remember when I was like really little, like I had this idea of like someday in the future, I'm going to help my dad reconnect with what he used to do. And I wasn't sure, like it wasn't like something that I wrote down to then like set a date or whatever. It was just something that I had in mind. And then I moved to, well, I then a couple of years passed, and I decided after realizing that my situation in Florida, where I used to live, wasn't what I was looking for in a lifestyle. Uh, I decided to move, and the lifestyle that I've built for myself here and the opportunities that have been presented because of it, one day I realized I can do it now. And so I did. I called him up one night and I told him about what I just said. That he didn't know about this. He didn't know that had these kind of thoughts in my head about helping him reconnect with stuff. And I said, "This is now I'm in a position where I can actually take this seriously and make it into a viable business model." And so we've been doing that. And the idea for the business was in like mid-December. So technically now we're celebrating a year of it, but we've technically been in business for, I would say, 6 to 7 months, maybe 8 months, and it's been an incredible journey. For me, it's as I've never had a role model for business or anything like that, or anybody that I could really ask for much advice on how to do an art business in particular, especially with the inventory that I deal with. And so the entire time, it's like It's like when you walk on the beach into the water, and you keep walking and you keep walking because for me it felt like something was pushing me from behind to keep going, and then I have to like grab a snorkel because I'm going underwater now, and then while I'm underwater I got to start building a way to make the snorkel longer because I keep going into deeper end, and I'm getting used to it a little bit, but it constantly feels like I'm diving into stuff that I've never seen before, and I guess that's just part of being a business owner.
I was about to say that analogy, like, I resonated with me 100% in this year because I'm I'm basically fresh out of school almost. I mean, I've been out of school for like 8-ish months or so, something like that now. But finding a job in design was difficult because I graduated at the start of the pandemic. And so I just kind of had to say, okay, well, I guess I'm just my own business caretaker and everything now, because now I don't, I'm now also cut off from like family and everything. And so I was like, well, better just figure it out. And like the further I got, I was like, oh my God, contracts and oh geez, like there's all this, I have to like manage all of this money, and I have to like find work and bid on work, at least, from that perspective. So the whole snorkel building thing, I feel that every day. I'm like, the weight of all the water is like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sometimes like for me, like one of the things that I realized, I'm like a very I like to reflect on my own actions constantly. Like it's just part of how my brain functions. I can't not do it. And so for me, I'm constantly thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking about what I've done, what other people have done around me, trying to figure out what they're doing. Because I always, like when I was little, I would run all of these like worst case scenario situations. And it's like I'm training myself to overcome an unexpected situation. And so because of that, I always would formulate these little plans of like, all right, let me project what I want my future to be in 10 years and try to work towards that. And somehow that works for everybody. It did not work for me at all, not even a little bit. And that's what I did for 26 years until one day I'm like, screw it, I can't really do this anymore. And I flipped it on its head, where I started saying, rather than me trying to match up to a goal that I would set for myself, let me simply try to make myself better than what I am right now, but on a constant basis. And then opportunity will naturally present itself as long as I'm in the right environment. And that's what got me to move. That's why I moved, because I was in an environment where the opportunities that I felt I was going to be open to didn't exist there. Other opportunities existed for other people, but not for what I wanted. And so, like I luckily I found the right environment where that mindset, where it's just me constantly thinking about how can I make myself better today, rather than me trying to match up to an illusion or an aspiration of myself that isn't real yet, at least. Then the environment did the rest of the work, where if I got better at talking and communicating with people, somehow somebody that is related to that comes in and they improve my life for me. And if somebody needs that help, I'm there to help them. So it's now I'm not as my point is that before I would have been deathly afraid of that darkness, the depth of the ocean that I felt I was constantly walking towards. And now my mindset is, let me not even look at that. Let me just focus on making sure I can still breathe right now. And if it happens to get deeper, it's still the same problem. How do I breathe? It's not, oh, I'm getting deeper. No, it's how do I get a breath?
We're getting freaking deep here, man. We are 20 minutes into this podcast, and we are like, if any of you have not made a New Year's resolution, take the last 5 minutes of what Rafi just said and make that your New Year's resolution.
I was gonna say,
right? Just get smarter every day. Do better than you were the day before, because If not, you will start drowning. And a lot of people went through this problem in 2020 of shit. The whole world is changing.
It's just falling apart.
And what am I supposed to do? Now, a lot of us were like, you mean we don't go talk to people? We stay inside and do our own thing?
Already
Business as
wasn't
usual.
doing that.
Check, and check. But a lot of people had to readjust to this work from home atmosphere. And I think a lot of employers are saying, wait a minute, how much are we paying for rent again? Shit, we don't need to be paying that anymore. I mean, geez, to give you an idea, there is not... Well, okay, Rafi and I are in the same time zone, right? You're in Eastern time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are 3 time zones spanned in this call alone. And so that's interesting. And there's going to be the next calls that we do, we're going to span not only, well, no, the one that we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, that one we're going to be spanning multiple days worth of time zones. We're talking to someone from Australia. Billy Rubin's going to be a guest. So we'll tease her right now as well. But yeah, it truly is about improvising, adapting, and overcoming, right? The whole military aspect of just getting shit done. And it's what we tell inventors that are just kind of stuck. I had a 1-hour meeting with an inventor earlier this week that's just like, I don't know where to start. I said, just start. It doesn't matter if you start correctly. Just start. If you want to start correctly, great. We will help you start correctly. But if you don't just start, you'll never get to the finish. And if you don't start swimming toward the surface or building a snorkel, you won't be able to breathe. And if you just let yourself sink and sink and sink, you're going to end up down there with everybody else. And I guess that brings up an important point. If you feel that you are sinking, do not be afraid to reach out for help. People will be there to pick you up, whether they are your friends, your family, or a professional. People will be there for you. You just have to accept the fact that you need a little help getting back up to the surface. And there's nothing wrong with that. Right? We're getting cathartic this first episode, huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
I was going to say, like, well, first of all, it got super deep because you have 2 artists on the podcast now, which is going to inherently... It's going to send it that direction.
I mean, really, there are 4 artists on the podcast. 2
there are.
in 2D.
In a manner of speaking.
One of them is really good in 3D, and the other one just makes the stuff that the one that's really good in 3D makes.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like I always say, everyone wants to create because I think everyone has an inherent want to leave something behind or also express themselves through something.
Everyone wants a legacy.
Yeah, and engineers do it. It's just with different tools. Like we talked about, a camera is a tool for an artist, not necessarily their defining thing. Like, I use computers for a lot of work that I do, but I would never say that I'm like I'm not a graphic artist. That's not like what I would say. I'm just an artist and designer because I consider those separate for, I've talked about that before. But yeah, dang. Also, I'm looking at the website for the Galleria. Is it just Cayman?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Galeria Caimán.
Perfect. Great. Now I don't.
That's the answer of you're too white to say it.
Which is, I gave it a shot though, and I tried.
So think of Kai as in Kai. So it's spelled Caima with an accent on the A, then N. But imagine you're just saying Kai, Kai, and then man, Kaiman.
And we'll have, if you're listening audio only and you're not able to see wonderful, glorious Rafael, we will have the links to his work and anything that he wants to share with us in the description for you so you can check it out at your leisure. But yeah, I mean, I knew you when you were pure photography and you were just starting to get into the art. I remember when you first came to me with these sublimated aluminum prints.
Yeah.
And like, do you like these? I'm like, oh, dude, you just opened up a whole new bag. And I remember it was a sunset photo that you had. And we were messing, when you had your first gallery showing in St. Pete, and we were messing around with the lighting to show, all right, because it's aluminum, it has that certain reflectivity to it. And if we make the lights a certain way, if we have them dim throughout the show, people can see that there is more than two dimensions to this. But and some of those dimensions are your perception and where this brings you. And Rafi, you were talking before we started recording about this journey of art, and a lot of people don't get it. I know when I first met you, I didn't get it. I'm like, it's a photo.
Yeah.
I've got a phone. It takes great photos. And unfortunately, phones are getting considerably better in the photos they are able to take. But back then, do I have it handy? I don't see it on my desk. I had a Nexus 5, which is, I mean, great camera back then, but nowhere near where we're at these days. And, you know, seeing the difference in even just dynamic range and what you were able to capture with a regular camera. It was the person behind it. It was the photographer that mattered so much. And we see all these people on Instagram using their cell phones, thinking they're the next, I don't know, give me a really famous photographer that I can use here.
Ansel Adams.
Okay,
There we go.
I was going to say Jackson Pollock, but I know that he wasn't a
That's not
photographer.
no.
That's
Pollock was the
different
first
realm.
thing that came through. Yes, thinking they're the next Ansel Adams, and they're not. And it's unfortunate because it's given people that take the time to do it kind of it's tough, right? Similar to 3D printing, where you can go get a $200 3D printer and call yourself a 3D printing person, but you're not. Spoiler alert, you're not. And if you haven't been in this industry for more than a couple of years, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So stop it. I mean, yes, go help people, but stop saying you're an expert. Stop it. Gosh.
Well, see, I would say, I think there's like, this is my argument for, I think the better phones get, I think that's great. And it's great for people to have a powerful camera in their pocket. And just like we were saying, you can shoot on real film and you can shoot digitally. And if that's part of your process, that's great.
Yeah.
But doesn't matter what comes out of it or how you made it. If someone took a photo on their phone and it ends up in a gallery, it's meant to be there. Someone chose it for a reason, you know?
Well, to that point is like, that's part of the reason why I transitioned away from calling myself a photographer rather than an artist, because I started shifting to, when I first started photography, like everybody, I focused on getting better and better equipment. And because I thought that the equipment was the thing that was going to take me to the next step.
What did you start with? I'm curious.
The first camera I had was a point and shoot it was my mom's point and shoot camera, and it was really shitty. But I used it, and my mom got tired of lending it to me. And so I begged her to buy me one. And so I ended up buying a camera. It was a Casio EXHF100, I believe, was the acronym of it. I was infatuated with that little thing, but it only for the 3 months that I had it, because it was nothing happened to it. But well, what happened is I changed, and so I got to a point where it was just a point and shoot, and so there was no manual controls to it, like a DSLR, an SLR. Or a mirrorless body. And so I got to a point where everything that I felt I could get out of that at that point, I had kind of gotten past, acquired. And so that's when my parents started realizing that, hey, this is not like just a little hobby or whatever. And so I spent, I think it was 8 months researching on what was going to be the best camera for me to move on to. And so then I got a Canon T3i at that point, and that's the camera I was using for 8 years. I used that for 8 years, and then during that period, so to kind of like bring it in with what we were talking about, I focused a lot at the beginning on getting better and better equipment. But as I got better at using equipment, I started realizing that, hey, my skills are becoming good enough now where I can start being retroactive about the equipment. And rather than trying to get away from the limitations, seeing how to work with the limitations imposed. And so uh, it that's like a big theme in my own life, where at the beginning I become aware of what limitations are around me, like as an artist, and then I try to not box myself in, but expose myself to all the different ways that I can attack a problem. And then once I get
Mhm.
good enough, deciding on what tool I'm going to use, then that's when I start applying limitations and sort of barriers of work. Because it's like we don't work outside where there are no walls. We have to find a room in which to work in order to have an environment that's within our control to produce what we want to be producing. And so I would build my own box for myself, so I wouldn't get distracted by the endless possibility of everything that exists. Uh, so like with the smartphone cameras, I actually recently, uh, the last piece that I found collected for, it was taken with my cell phone. I took it with my cell phone, and I did the one thing I have never done in the 12 years of my photography, and I used Photoshop to raise its resolution, so then I could print it bigger, because
Enhance.
yeah, because the client wanted to print it pretty big on aluminum, and so I needed higher resolution for it. So I enhanced the image and I gave it to them, and it's on a metal print in their house, and they love it. I love the image, and it was taken by a phone.
It's
So,
What phone do you have?
I'm just using a Google Pixel.
mm,
Pixel
Uh,
Gang.
Yeah,
yeah,
buddy.
yeah.
Pixel
yeah,
gang.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, Thomas.
You Apple disgusting creature.
I'm just saying the new phone can shoot in RAW, which is a kind of big
yeah,
deal. So
yeah. No, well, for me, like what I mentioned before about using Photoshop, one of the limitations that I set upon myself when I first picked up my first camera, or when I bought my Canon, my first DSLR. I remember when I unboxed it, I walked out into the backyard, and me being this cerebral person that is constantly evaluating everything, I sat down by the base of a tree in my backyard, and I just looked at it and I said, all right, I can go in any direction I want with this tool in my hands. I can Photoshop, I can edit, I can not do that. And that's what I decided to do. I just decided
Mhm.
to focus entirely on the tool that I had in my hands,
You just
rather
work within
than
those limitations.
those were the limitations I imposed intentionally on myself. Not because I
Mhm.
thought editing was bad or anything. On the contrary, it's its own art form. But that's the thing. It's an art form that I didn't want to make art in, because I was interested enough already in just the art that I could produce
Mhm.
with the lens, with the light that comes into this contraption. And so that's why in 12 years, I mean, I've done professional gigs. My work's been in magazines, and I've done many weddings with hundreds of people. I've done events with tens of thousands of people, and I've never had a single client ask me, "Oh, can you edit this?" Because they don't really see any issue with the photography, which has always been that was literally the goal I set for myself within the first 5 years of photography. I said, for the first 5 years of photography, my entire goal is going to be to try to make photos good enough where somebody doesn't come up to me and say, "Oh, these photos aren't edited. Can you edit them for me?" Uh, so that was my point of entry, I'd say, as a photographer, getting past that point, especially as a photographer that decided not to post process in a world where 99% of all commercial work and wedding work and everything is post process. um, and yeah so with people, like what you were saying, is like everybody now does have access to a camera, and every day they're getting access to a better quality camera,
Yep.
through the improvement of technology. And so they're not working as there are a lot more photographs, but there aren't a lot more, I would say, specialized photographers.
Yeah,
They're just people. Or go ahead.
Yeah.
they don't have the eye. The eye is what is important. If you don't see that image in a way that is telling you more than what you are going to capture, then stick to Instagram, right?
Well, if you
Right.
don't, well, I
Anybody
think a
can
lot of
shoot
the
a
time,
photo.
well, I think
Well,
a lot of the time is the intent, right?
Yeah,
So we're
exactly.
not,
Yes.
I think it's wrong to say that people don't have the eye. And it's something that I talk to people a lot about, like your limitations and what you do. And in my experience, people will always say, like, oh my God, Thomas, like, I wish I could draw. And I'm like, well, you can, but I spend 6 hours a day doing that. And so
That's the difference.
of course I can draw because
Mhm.
I draw, and you don't. So if you did draw, you could draw. And just like if you did take the time to have the eye, you could develop the eye, and maybe some people are more predisposed at the start, but never to a point that it's completely out of reach for anybody.
Right.
But these
Right.
Instagram photographers, maybe their thing is they want to be an Instagram photographer and they're not necessarily fighting for gallery
I
space.
mean, let's be real. They're making money making more money than at least three of us. Okay, I don't know what
That's
Rafa's
true.
pulling in, but I know they're making more than at least three of
Well,
us.
And even if that's the measure or whatever, but they don't want to do the work that is, they're not looking at the world in an intent to capture a specific meaning. What they wanted to do is, I want to take a cute picture of my friend, and they're probably pretty good at it,
Yeah.
but that's not the gallery work. Like it's almost a completely different beast in that
Right.
sense, right?
Yeah, it's definitely all. You took the words out of my mouth in terms of the intention, because I completely agree with that. Because you don't, like what you were saying, Grant, with the 3D printing. One of the things that you said about your point where you can't call yourself an expert was the idea of the time commitment. You said that if you've only been doing this for 2-3 years, like that's still not enough for you to be able to call yourself an expert. Because I remember this quote. I forgot where it's from, but I heard it recently, and it was this person saying, "You're not an adult because you have all these big important responsibilities. You're an adult once you accumulated enough of the small failures in life." And that's the idea of gaining experience. And so, yeah, it's are you, as an artist, like for me, when I decided I wasn't going to edit, I intentionally decided that I was going to make life harder for myself as an artist. And
because you knew it was going to make you more creative, having to work within those limits, right?
Well, it made me more creative within the area I wanted to be creative in. And so, I feel that's one of the, like, when I decided to move, that's one of the things that I realized about myself that I lacked. I lacked the awareness of what it means to face a challenge. When there's a problem going on in my life, rather than me saying, "Oh fuck, like there's a wall in front of me, and like how am I going to overcome this?" Instead of me thinking about what was happening in front of me, I now think about, who am I going to be once I overcome it?
That's what 2020 was, though, man. It was a freaking wall, and a lot of people found ways out of it. I mean, I'm part of a big maker Discord, and we had our first hangout of the year last night, and we all kind of sat there and reflected on what did we do that was out of the ordinary that we found we really enjoyed. And my answer was a podcast. We started our podcast. I think this is technically chapter 17. I don't know. That's why I didn't say it in the beginning, because I don't remember.
Sounds about right.
But yours, it is going to be coming out tomorrow. Or I guess for everyone that would be today. But it'll be coming out on the 3rd, so you will be the first episode of 2021. But it was interesting because so many people said, I did this, I did that, I did this. One person has gotten heavy into doing turning a 3D printer into a pen plotter, but using fabric markers so he can make his own custom t-shirts in 15 minutes, which is amazingly cool. And I said I want to learn how to do it so I can make my own apparel. But there were a couple of people that kind of went off the rails a little bit and said, "Oh, I renovated my house and I found that I love doing electrical work, so I decided that I'm going to go to school to become an electrician.
Mm.
And that is truly learning your limitations and then seeing where you can land, right? You know,
Yeah.
for us, we internalized for a couple of weeks. We said, all right, let's make a bunch of PPE and just give it away. We're going to lose a bunch of money doing it, but that's okay. We're keeping people from dying. That's a little bit better than making money every now and then. Unless you're a publicly traded company, then screw everybody else. Or you're Ruth Chris.
Yeah.
Bastards. But
I was gonna
Go ahead.
I was just gonna hop in with like the idea of what I find really interesting, and I'm curious to hear what Rafi has to say about this. But so as far as 3D printing goes and your tools and what you're doing with those tools, and now you're talking about someone innovating on that tool or changing it up so that they can make t-shirts or whatever kind of saleable thing. There's a lot of similarities there too, because I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing more 3D printed pieces of art in galleries and things. And I'm sure you will see the lashback from like a ceramics or like a traditional sculpture community saying this is not art.
Isn't it real art?
Well, it's like saying this isn't art because the skill that's required to, blah, blah, blah. You could go on all day, but
yeah. Well, it's like Scorsese with the Marvel movies. It's not real.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, but it's it's making with the intent and what you want to do with that medium. Cause then it says something different. If I make a pot as a ceramicist, but I make almost the exact, if I make a 3D scan of that pot and then I print it, and it's the same pot, except now it's been printed in it's saying something completely different. And now it's its own piece of art, right?
Yeah.
Because someone wanted to do that and they chose 3D printing. And so I think it's interesting that 3D printing is kind of, we can get it, I'm going to get into it. Screen printing was an industrial process. It was an industrial process that was used to make like the fronts of microwaves and like everything that you could ever imagine was screen printed because it was quick, easy, fast. And ceramics was an industrial process for like most of humanity, and a lot of like pipes are still made out of ceramic, and now it's a high art form. And the list goes on, right? It all comes out of this. And so 3D printing to me is like, oh, we're still seeing this, what we're assuming is this very industrial thing that will probably remain that way for a very long time, if not forever.
A long time.
As this way to create things as part of industry. But then that's when people start to take the industry and turn it into the art, because it has so much potential in that area, right? So it's like, we've seen it happen before and again. And I'm curious to see, like, once 3D printers start getting in the hands like they are now of more and more and more people, how people are going to start making like fine art using 3D printers. I think it's already happening. It's just not as
we've
like,
done it. We've done figurines of people, and when you're looking at like a celebrity, Snoop Dogg, Steve Aoki, those are two of our clients. For them to make custom figurines of themselves would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars up front, because that's an injection molding process or resin casting that's then hand painted. We can 3D print them in full color and ship them out for you, like that. I mean, we could have a dozen of them done tomorrow if we wanted. That's where 3D printing is amazing, because it'll let an artist test the waters. If they want to utilize that 3D printed material, great, because it is a unique medium. And now that we have some machines in plastics that can do more than one color reliably, because reliability is the big thing in 3D printing. We are seeing stuff that is way nicer than it used to be, right? The quality of machines is getting better. Their slicing programs are getting better. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a designer to do the design work for you, or you yourself are not a designer, then you're going to be stuck to going online, finding a file you like, and downloading it. The same way that if you want to put a picture on a website, if you cannot make it yourself, you don't have anybody that you can pay, you're going to go to Google and likely steal something because you don't understand the idea of, copyright infringement. But Because the likelihood of you getting caught is pretty low, and well, that's the world that people play in. I mean, we just got a brand new client. That Rafi, I sent you those photos. The last job of 2020 was phallic-shaped objects because
very penetrating.
Yes, a great way to finish 2020.
Very
off.
fitting for the year that
Very
we've had.
fitting. But yeah, so now we're doing more adult stuff for her, and very clearly some things that are copywritten. I said, these are copywritten. And she said, I don't care. I'm like, okie dokie. She doesn't have enough business that it's...
She's going to fly right under the radar.
Oh, yeah. She'll fly right under the radar, and she'll get a cease and desist. She'll stop. She's already made all of her money, so it doesn't matter. She's willing to take that risk, but that's not how people should do things. And it's a shame that this is what it's come to. And look, she does great stuff. Her business, she makes bath bomb molds. She does not make the bath bombs, makes the molds for them, and then you are the person that does all the bath bomb stuff. So she 3D prints the masters. She'd never gotten something done in resin. She has her stepson doing all of the sculpting inside a ZBrush. And if anyone's worked in ZBrush, it is, if you are not an artist, do not try ZBrush. Like, to give you an idea, normally
I've seen it
files in
once
the
and
top
it
left
frightens
corner.
me.
Yeah, it's files normally in the top left corner of everything you're used to. Files, top left, boom, you can save it.
Click.
It's in the middle for ZBrush because it is because that all of their menus are in alphabetical order. And it's just it's
What?
yes, and it starts there. It will randomly crash for reasons that are unknown, and its autosave sometimes works if it likes you, but it is one of the best tools for doing sculpting. Now, there is like SculptGL and some other open source sculpting programs out there. They all kind of operate similarly, there it is, to ZBrush, but you need an artist. And the models that she sent us, I mean, they were extremely high resolution, but this type of 3D printing doesn't do it justice. As soon as we ran one on the resin, it was smooth. And that's exactly what she needs for what she's doing. So now I have more of a reason to get bigger resin printers.
to make dicks.
To make bigger phalluses.
Bigger.
Actually,
bigger
no,
dicks.
she's doing she sent me a catfish, which is a fish with a cat head on it, and then some truck nuts.
Truck nuts,
Doing
of course.
two big
Wait,
testicles.
truck nut bath bombs?
Yeah.
I can only
What
I'm
is this
guessing she's
market?
doing this
Who's buying?
bachelorette parties, dude.
Yeah, I don't know.
my
It sounds
God.
to me it sounds hilarious. That sounds like
And
Yeah,
she's
that's
starting to move
hilarious.
into the cannabis
That's
industry
entertaining.
because,
Oh.
well, okay, if it's not clear now,
Truck nuts in a joint.
Trump is not
What's
getting
not
another
to
4
love?
Yeah.
years.
That's
Exactly.
Biden is likely going to be working to decriminalize
Legalize.
marijuana and legalize it. So she is looking to do really small ones and do like a sheet of them so you can have gummy molds, so you can do edibles.
Oh.
And I don't know
Nothing
why
is
someone
more
would-
hilarious.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Right.
Dude, nothing's more hilarious to me than like a mold for like a gummy joint with like CBD or like THC in it. So it's like a joint, but it's gummy, you know. So it's like a candy cigarette, but it still gets you high. But
Oh my God.
God, it's so funny. There's so many layers to that.
I guess we should point out that Tad lives in a state where it's legal. Thomas, is it legal in your state yet?
Officially now, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Is it legal in Pennsylvania?
It's medicinally it is.
It's medicinal
okay.
legally in Florida as well, but it's not difficult to get a medicinal.
It's more
card.
the majority of the states now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
A
was
lot of
gonna say,
states enacted it, and
You can't put the cat back in the bag with that.
no.
The time. It's just a matter of time.
Look, if you haven't invested in weed stocks and you firmly believe that this industry is going to explode, now might be the right time. That is not financial advice. We are not financial advisors. Quite frankly, we barely know what we're doing half the damn time. So don't listen to our advice unless we're talking about like product development. Then you can listen to us, or branding for Thomas,
arts.
or art
Or
for
arts.
Rafi.
Yes.
For art.
It's so fun.
I have firmly enjoyed. So this client, her branding is meh. I said, she's like, do you have anyone that can help me with branding? I said, actually,
yes.
we do. She said, well, how does that process work? I said,
We have an
I
episode
got
on
3
that.
episodes on this where Thomas came
Nothing.
on as a guest, just tore apart our branding in like 2 episodes. And I think we had a break for 2 or 3 episodes.
I
and he
wasn't that
came
mean.
back.
I
Oh, but it was
nice.
great. I mean, you
You
were
jerk,
honest,
Thomas.
and that's
How
what's
dare you.
important. If you can't be honest with your clients, who can you be honest with? Because it certainly won't be yourself.
Right.
Being honest with clients is easy because at the end of the day, we don't care about feelings. We care about making awesome. That's what we do. We make awesome. That's why this podcast is called Making Awesome. Rafi cares about making awesome. People don't buy the art. They don't buy the art, right? You bring this in. You take those photos because you want to tell the story. If someone else can get on that train and ride that train, by all means, hey, there's a link to purchase. But if not, you're still doing it because that's what you want to do. And that's the big difference, right? Between someone who is a professional artist and an artist, right? An artist will do things because they want to, because this is what they want. If you buy it, great. If you don't, somebody else probably will. A professional artist, when they're commissioned to do things, that may not have that same feelings to it, I guess.
You know what's really interesting to me is I had the best advice I ever got was from my high school painting teacher. He was this really amazing guy who was teaching kids not just, and he was a working artist at the time, which is pretty rare as far as I know for high schools to have like a working artist who's showing work also teaching high schoolers. I usually feel like that ends up being more of a collegiate kind of thing. But
Next door to Miss Cohen's room. Right?
yeah. But I just didn't want to drop
Okay,
names
that
because I didn't think they would want any of us to like. But
Eh.
so he was a really great guy, and he didn't just teach us like how to paint, but he also took the students that he saw who really wanted to make painting or make art their livelihood and their life, how to run their business, which was really awesome because that's something that artists don't think about, or at least aren't taught about early on, because it's not seen as like a career path in society early on, which is unfortunate because you could get these things running earlier. But he would be telling students like, how much did your paint cost? How much did your canvas cost? How much time did you put in? And then put some money on top of it for yourself. And that's how much your painting should cost. Like, never sell your painting for less than literally it's worth, like in material, And that was like a mind-blowing thing to a lot of us. And the best advice that he said was there are no stupid artists, or there are no
Starving.
There are no starving artists, just stupid ones. And that was because people can sell their art as long as they know how, as long as they're given the ability and the knowledge to sell their art and show their work.
Well, and clearly that's not widespread enough because there's a reason we have the starving artist stereotype.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard because there's a lack of education around turning your passion or your art into your business, right? Which is something that I'm glad I was taught in high school. And so I was able to continue my life with that in my head, saying, oh, this is a business, I can make this work while having a good, and doing what I want, as long as I keep my ducks in a row, like I need to eat, but
No, you're not supposed to eat. All artists are supposed to be starving. If you're not starving, how are you going to get your work done? Gosh.
It's been fascinating for me, like especially now, because I worked as my own artist for like a couple of years now, and I learned really quickly at the beginning that just because the reason I'm not selling when I started all this, the reason I'm not selling is not because I'm a bad artist. It's because I'm a bad business person. I don't know business, and there's a very big difference between that. It's the art. The work of an artist is to create art, and the work of a business person is to sell things. And so to run a business essentially, and to stay in business if you're good. And so like now starting my own business, representing these like famous figures from a whole different country. It's learning how to, like as a little Cuban boy that was born in another country and then came to this one and starting from scratch with an inventory that, like, the people that I work with are these people that they're contemporaries, the people that are their same age, that graduated with them in school, are people that are selling individual pieces for tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars through Sotheby's, through Phillips, through these, which are international art auction houses. And they're these top end world class artists. But it wasn't because they're any better than the people that I represent.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's because they knew who they had to get in contact with. They knew the relationships they had to build. They knew the angles that they had to play. They had something other than art to get them onto an international platform. And so my job now is to be that platform for these artists that are of equivalent quality. And to me, it's interesting where, like, what the analogy that I was giving earlier, which is like going deeper and deeper into the ocean. It's like on my back, I have these monolith people, like famous figures that are famous, like they're rock stars in their own country. And I'm just a little guy walking with these things on my back, and I'm sinking and like constantly figuring out how do I get my snorkel to be longer, because I'm sinking really quickly. And I need to sink enough where the boulders are finally with me underwater, because that's where the money is, because there needs to be also money when you're an artist, so you're not starving, so you can take care of your own family.
Yep.
So you can continue doing the thing that you love to do comfortably, rather than having to. Ultimately, what I want are very few simple things. Like, I was born in Cuba, and so for me, this is more than just representing an artist. This is representing who I am, where I'm from, my culture, my identity. And so that is something that empowered me to start this business, and empowered it to be more than just a business, but my legacy, what I leave behind. The other aspect is, these are people that can envision the future and turn the obtuse fractionality of what's possible out of anything into something that we can see with our own eyes through their art. How can I not work to make sure that the only thing on their mind is, where's my paintbrush, rather than, crap, my paintbrush broke yesterday. Where do I get the materials to make a new one? Because they can't just go to the store and buy it either. And so having that relationship, at least for me, is something brand new that I've had to really fight for moving here.
I'm curious. You don't have to answer these questions. You can just tell me you don't want to answer it. How do you make your money? Are you taking a commission when the art goes to a new owner? Are they paying you up front? How does that work for people that are interested in this industry? Because when I heard you start to do this, I'm like, this is some white collar shit over here. You're starting to fence art. Just say you're an art fencer. It just sounds better.
Well, I'm in a very unique position where I'm a person that has a quality art that definitely multimillionaire art dealers and billionaire collectors, they buy this stuff. This is the stuff that they buy. And it's not because I'm just saying it, but because it's what actually is sold through these famous auction houses. And so I'm essentially this nobody that has this kind of inventory. And so I have it, for me, not having me starting off as a novice from scratch is a big entry point, a barrier to entry. But because I do have this level of work and this ability to someday catapult these artists into these high figure numbers, I had the confidence in being able to go up to the artists and tell them something they've never heard before in their life, which is, how much do you want? Not what these wealthy tourists have come into the country, especially like people like myself that have lived in the United States for many years. They go back. Like, this is what currently happens. People that do what I do, because they know the language, because they know the culture, because they know all these things, they go back and then they haggle and haggle and haggle because they know what it is to be an artist living in Cuba. And the on the minds of a Cuban is not, what am I going to do 10 days from now, a year from now, 10 years from now? It's like, what the hell am I going to do right now? So then tomorrow I can ask the same question. And so because they know that, they're aware of that, they're like, all right, here in the States, if I went to an artist to sell me this exact piece and they had the same history and the same ability, they wouldn't sell it for me for less than 3, 4, 5,000 or 10, 15,000. But over there, they know they can go and take advantage of them and say, all right, I'll take it for a lot less than that, considerably less. And so because this is my legacy and not just my business, and this is tied into my identity and my father, which is what inspired all this, I can't pervert it. And I don't want to, because once I pervert it, then it's like I'm destroying myself. And so I went to them and I talked this at length with my dad and the other people that I've consulted about this. And we've gone to the artist and say, what do you want? And don't just give me what's going to get you, like, don't just say a number that's going to get you by for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Tell me,
bigger than that.
Think considerably bigger, think long term. Now, hold on a second, because we can't give you the prices yet of Sotheby's because we're not there yet. But realize that our goal is to stick with you so we can get you to that point. But right now, what's going to keep you afloat and focused entirely on making more art, so that next time we come to you, it's not you telling us, I'm sorry, I couldn't make it because I had to go find a paintbrush. No, it's all right, here, I got 5 more for you to keep going with.
That's got to be a game changer for those artists, going from the
It
previous scheme of like being taken advantage of to having this opportunity.
Well, they all, like, Cuba's a land of PTSD for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And one of them for the artists is being taken advantage of, especially by people in my position where I live here and now I own my own house. And so that gives a level of presentation in their eyes that says, oh, it's just another one of those gringos that's coming down to take advantage of us, even if I was Cuban born. Well, especially because I'm Cuban born, they're even more cautious about it. And so, because they've been bitten in the ass enough. And I mean, I've had artists that we've talked to where they don't want to work with us because 15 years ago they got art stolen from them by somebody else pitching them a pyramid scheme. That sounds very much like my own, except like my own, I'm putting my life, like my own funds, everything into it.
Well, that was my next question, was like, how many people are receptive to this and how many just turn you away?
The majority, we've only had 1 or 2 artists. No, we've only had 1 artist definitely say no. And we plan on changing their mind once we show them the reality through 15 other artists. Because that's one of the things that I, like my dad, because he's also like very emotionally invested in this, because this is what makes him vibrate. Like, this is what makes him resonate. He's very emotionally attached into it. And so for him, when an artist says no at the beginning, I would tell him, like, just remember, wait, because I'm okay. I want them to say no, because if I know what their problems are, the reasons for saying no, I can come up with the reasons why for them to say yes next time we meet. And so now, if I know what the problem looks like, I know what the solution is going to look like. And so let's then work with the artists that have said yes, like Eliseo Valdez, who I have here, and sell their work, get them more recognition, then go back a couple months later, a couple years later, and go to this artist and say, hey, I know you said no, but look, this is our catalog.
Look at what we've done. Yeah.
Right.
Look at what we've done with all these other people. And I don't take it negatively when they say no. Because you can't.
It'll all be sorted in time.
Yeah, you can't judge a veteran for punching you in the face because a loud bang
Yeah,
happened in the background.
exactly.
Like you can't do that. And so it's not productive. And like I try to be as productive and realistic as possible and understanding. And so if they say no, I'm actually happy, or I'm actually happy when they say no, because what I don't want is to them say nothing at all, because then I don't know how I can fix the issue.
I mean, it is tough. We've we've had plenty of people that say, I don't want to work with you. Okay. Or, oh, you're too expensive, or something like that. My favorite ones are the ones that say we are too expensive. They go to Upwork to get the work done. Then they come to us with a steaming pile of dog shit, and they say, can you fix this? No. We literally just had a client who said we were too expensive, went to Upwork, we did all the 3D printing for it. She got the part. She's like, oh, it doesn't fit this. Can you fix it? Said, we didn't do the design. If you want to get the design fixed and reprinted, you need to work with your designer from Upwork. Because if we did the design, we would test all that stuff for you before we would go to print it. You worked with someone who their goal is to do as minimum amount of work as possible for the largest amount of profit possible, and then send you on your way and get to the next job. Mm-hmm. The relationship matters so much more. And yes, those, the really fancy houses that will sell the art for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than what you could potentially get yourself, mm-hmm. They'll make them more money. And if that's all they're after is money, go ahead. But if you're after someone who's going to take care of you, if you want to be with someone who understands your culture, understands your story, can speak your language in more ways than just one, then you go with the people that you trust. Because at some point, a good relationship has considerably more value than good sales. Because a good relationship would say, if you're in someone's house for some reason and you see art that is very similar to one of the artists that you carry, and you're not there about selling art, you might be able to sell a piece because of your relationship. You can talk for this artist, talk them up, explain everything, because the art is gorgeous, but the art without understanding the story is such a big deal. While we are a product development company, while 3D Musketeers does product development, we are professional storytellers, because that's what we do. We tell your story, whether it's you as Rafi, whether it's Tad or Thomas or anybody. It's not our story. We are helping you put ink on paper. We are not a co-author. We are helping you write a chapter or two. And whether we're a ghostwriter, whatever it might be, we are something involved in there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I remember when I first moved to Pittsburgh, in order to kind of get a feel for the environment, the new environment, I had an art piece and I applied it to this an yearly event called Art All Night. And I remember I went, and the event is a full, I think it was 24 hours. And so you go to this giant hangar in this industrial zone, and you leave your art piece there for 24 hours, and thousands of people from all over the city come in and look at it. And I remember going there, and I stood there 18 out of the 24 hours in front of the piece. And I remember having a bunch of people come up, representing it, because I'm like, well, I'm the artist, I got to talk about it, of course. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just like decoration. And so I stood there, and I remember this a bunch of people, but this older couple in particular that said they'd gone to every single Art All Night in the last 23 years or 20 something years. And they've never once seen a single artist stand in front of their work to talk about it.
Seriously?
Seriously.
That's crazy.
Tens of thousands of artists in 20 years. And not a single one have they ever witnessed that.
The story
And-
matters so much more. The piece
It
of art
really
is pretty.
matters.
But if
Well-
you don't know the story, what the hell does
Yeah.
it matter?
Well, what's cool too is like I remember like one guy came up and he wasn't interested in my stuff at all, but he was looking at one that was like like literally next to mine, and the lighting in the place wasn't good because it was a commercial hangar, and it wasn't meant for displaying art. It was just meant for construction. But I carried with me a hand light, and so I noticed that he was having a little bit of trouble seeing, and I lit it up for him. And I didn't talk about mine because clearly he wasn't interested in my own stuff, and I just wanted him to enjoy it. And out of that, we started talking, and then he invited me out to coffee. And now, a year and a half later, him and are like, he's one of my closest friends, and he has 4 art pieces in his house, and he wasn't even interested in my own stuff at the beginning. And it's because of this. It's because of this relationship. It's because of this level of trust. Like now, I've been thinking about this for the last couple months or month or so. Like, you know what I'm really excited for? The kind of customer I'm excited for? I'm excited for the customer that looks at an art piece and I said, I'm not going to sell you that. And it's not because I don't think they can afford it or whatever. Even if they had the money, I wouldn't sell it to them because it wouldn't fit the environment of their home. It wouldn't fit what they're interested in. It wouldn't fit what would develop them as an individual, what they would benefit from having an art piece made by an artist of this caliber. And so what I would be focused on is finding the art piece that would truly reflect who they are. It's not because I don't want people to purchase, not even purchase, become supporters of these nationally recognized people so they can continue making more work. I don't want them to just buy it and then have it as something shiny to have on the walls.
Just for like name recognition.
Yeah, I don't want that. That's the last thing I want, actually. What I want is for you to look throughout the gallery, look at throughout the house, look online on my website, and then ask yourself, well, you know, I don't really see anything, but let me contact this guy because I know he's interested in making sure that I get what I want.
Because the connection is more important.
Because I will work for that, and like because I have literally thousands of artists in Cuba that I can contact today and say, hey, I have this collector that really wants something that is representative of our culture. And they like these sort of colors. They like this sort of atmosphere. This is a sort of space they're trying to fill. And then I look at the inventory of all these artists and I said, what do you want for that? Like, don't worry if you think it's too much money. What do you want from it? And then that's what I pitched because it's balancing both ends as well.
Yep.
And if, for example, I have a sculpture downstairs that we got in last month, and like that's a sculpture that I can see easily believe being sold like in Phillips for 80 grand, but we're not asking for anything anywhere near that. And then if somebody comes in and says, all right, I'll give you 40 grand for it, and they're clearly just doing a power buy where they just want to say to their neighbor, like, hey, I got the new Porsche kind of thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be interested in selling it to them because that in the art world, that's not what gets an art piece from 40,000 to 80,000. That's just making a sale. And so like having as a business owner and somebody that needs to also make money in order for the business to stay alive, I have to balance out the yin and yang of what it means to be a business that deals with art and tries to do it ethically for the most part. Thomas, you said something earlier with the intention about the art and form. And I've been really thinking about, like, in order to make art more accessible to the general public, especially like when Grant was talking about how when he first met me, he had no concept of art. Like he just thought it was something pretty or something. And I've been really thinking about that lately of how do I make something as complicated as the sort of art that I like, which I'm infatuated with conceptual art because I'm always thinking.
Yeah.
It goes in line with my nature as a person. I've been thinking of how do I make the word art understandable, relatable. And I realized for myself, the problem that I was having is I was trying to treat art as a noun. And as I was looking at this, like the last night or on New Year's, I went to bed at 10, but then I couldn't fall asleep. So I just got up, had a drink, and I just said, all right, well, since this is empty time, let me spend it by looking at the work that I represent. And so I spent 3 hours looking at 6 art pieces. And during that time, I finally realized the words that I was looking for. And I realized art is not a noun, or it can be a noun, but art is mostly an adjective. And it's also a gerund, a verb that is acting as a noun. Because you make art, you art. It's kind of like the word Viking. Like Viking is not a person.
It's like a profession.
It's an action.
Yeah.
And art is the same thing. It's something you make and it's something you perceive. That's why it's also an adjective. When I look at something like when I look at your drawing, Thomas, behind you, I'm perceiving it as art. I decide in my brain that it is art because that is how I am interpreting it. And so I am thus describing it as art. That's the adjective of it. And so that's where I think why it's so difficult for people to really perceive, because the world likes to think of it as a noun, when in reality, it's just the expression of an emotion. And then on the side of the consumer, the people that gets to see it, they look at it as like, why the hell is this bronze turd, literally a turd covered in bronze, being sold for, or the banana that sold for $100,000.
Oh yeah, that
Art
one.
Basel, like that is the epitome of conceptual art, right
I
there.
still ask why the hell a banana sold for 150 grand, and why the hell I can't capitalize.
Because why
on
not, Grant?
Well, no. As an art dealer,
I was gonna say, Grant.
All right,
before...
well, this is a piece of support material. I want this to sell for 200 grand. Conceptualize this shit.
Intent, right? It's intent.
It is.
So
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let Rafael do it because he'll say it better than I will.
Well, I was thinking, because I've been working a lot with tech industry people, because this is like a field, an industry where people are starting to make a lot of money in, and they have all this excess income that they don't know how to spend. And now with COVID, where people have to live at home, be at home constantly, they start noticing their empty walls. And they're like, I got to make my environment more conducive to the new lifestyle that I'm being forced into.
I like empty walls.
And so when you talk to people like that come from a background where it's all science, where it's all hard facts, benefit, pros versus cons, things like that, not really the emotional or the gray area, like there are two, I got like one clear answer that always lights it in their head. The reason somebody was willing to buy, or the reason the banana sold for 100,000 was because somebody was willing to pay 100,000 for it. And the other aspect is they understood what it meant when they would acquire that piece. And that's where the other side of the equation is. It's like
there's a bit of feedback to it, right?
Yeah, there's the hard facts of being willing to pay this much for it. And then there's the soft fact of what it makes you feel once it's in your possession. And so that's the other side of the coin, where it's slowly trying to get people that are in this area 100% slowly get to this side of the coin, where now what does it mean for you to be able to live with something like this 24/7? Because for me, I constantly feel like I'm living in a museum with high level artworks that I would only be able to access if I paid an entry fee for it and walked into another building full of all these famous artists.
Yep.
And that's why I own art and I have my own private collection and stuff like that. And why I do that, it's because it makes me reflect on the things that live inside of here that I just haven't unlocked yet. And that's my reason for doing it. And what I'm trying to do as somebody that is trying to get this into the hands of somebody else is trying to unlock their reason, helping them find their reason why they're willing to fork out this much amount of money, X or Y amount, for this, why they need it in their life. Just as how there are some people, like customers you have, that are willing to pay X and Y for the work because what they care about is the quality and the reassurance that the quality is consistent, where somebody else might not really care about that. They just want a 3D sculpture of a penis.
There are those. There are plenty of those.
Great. I'm
Y'all
so
make fun
stoked.
of me, but I made money on the last day of the year, so y'all can go straight to hell, okay?
Grant, I know an artist that sculpts specifically and only birds with penis heads on them, and he sells them all over the world. They're bought everywhere by art collectors. Yeah. It's just the way it is.
That would be interesting. Well, please come into my home and let me show you my vast collection of birds with penises on their heads.
Vast collection. But I was gonna say
that makes you weird. I think if you own more than 2, that's weird, right? No, I think more than 2 makes you a collector.
And rich enough to own more than 2 of them.
I don't know what they sell for.
Yeah, I think a lot. I don't know the exact prices off the top of my head, but I'm so stoked that I'm getting to talk to Rafael right now because because you're
like another one of me, someone that understands my plight.
Well, even within like an artistic community, there's I'm really into the high concept, like craziest shit that shouldn't. Sometimes I've come across art that I love so much because I know that the artist got to a point where they knew they could sell something. And so they just did whatever just to see. They were testing their limit. They were like, can I put this on a wall and will it sell because of my name now? Or is it because that weird interplay of like, yeah, that's my art. And sometimes they're on the inside thinking like, oh, this is
nobody's going to buy this.
Like, this is funny. Like, this is so funny.
You just described the entire career and fame of Andy Warhol.
Yeah. Yes. Which is amazing, right? Because of that, he made a statement on the entire career. Genius, because it wasn't the fact that his individual pieces were the art. He was literally himself being who he was and doing what he was the entire art piece. He was, it was insane.
It's kind of like Banksy now.
I was about to say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
when they were auctioning off his art piece,
and it shredded itself,
and it started shredding,
and it was like it's up in value.
And I think he created an art piece that literally says, "I can't believe people will buy this shit."
Yeah,
like it literally says that on a piece of paper, and it sold for tens of thousands of dollars.
What I don't realize is how no one noticed there was a shredder inside of the art piece. Like seriously, do you not pick it up and say this is oddly heavy?
But that's what's fascinating to me as a conceptualist, as a conceptual art lover and artist. It's like that's why for me in particular, it's so important to try to get people to understand why having something like this in your house is so valuable. And it's because it's like having constant moments, aha moments on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. Like for me, that's why I personally love conceptual art, because my aha moments come from me self-analyzing and looking at the world around me and trying to understand more. And so when I hang an artwork on my wall, it's not because I understand it entirely. It's because I want to get to understand it over time. And I want to be able to go back to it and say, I see something now that I didn't see yesterday because yesterday this didn't happen to me.
I 100% know, because I think what people miss a lot when it comes to I'm understanding art, or this piece uses a lot of blue, all that stuff. It's less about, some people want to read art like it's a book, and it's not, because the meaning is personal to you. And whether sometimes there's an artist statement, but sometimes there's not. And sometimes the artist statement will influence you, and sometimes it won't. Because at the end of the day, the person who's looking at it will feel differently than the person right next to them looking at the same thing. But both of their interpretations and what they take away are equally as valid and equally as important to both of them. And the artist could have made it with completely different intention.
Well, I see, like, for me, it's something that I can compare art to that a lot of people understand, or a lot more people understand, is love. So the idea of when you fall in love as a kid versus when you fall in love as a teenager versus when you fall in love as an adult versus when you fall in love after you create your own family. And the older you get, the more meaning and built from experience and understanding is attached to that emotion called love. And so love is just another, it's a thing that runs concurrently with the idea, the concept of art, the adjective of art, the gerund of art, where the love to me is conceptual art, where conceptual art, the more you dive into it, the more you gain from it. The more you try to understand it, the more you will understand. The more time you give it, the more time it'll give you. And so it's so hard to describe the love you feel for a significant other to a kindergartner because they haven't lived anything relatively remotely close to that in their life. They have no reference point.
Love is work. That's one thing that most people forget to talk about.
It's like the idea of you're not an adult until you've had this amount of small failures in your life. It's the same thing. You can't be an adult until time has passed, until something has passed in your life that has gotten you to a certain point. And so it's the same with art. Like when people knock it, like especially conceptual art, because it's, to me, the most pretentious. I hate pretentious people. I hate them. I hate the word. I loathe the word hate, because I don't like to hate people, because it's simply me just admitting my ignorance. And so, but I don't get along that well with fake plastic people, because I'm all about the conceptual. I'm all about that depth. But I understand they exist, and I understand I live in a world where people like that exist. And most of the time,
and I'm sure you run into plenty of people who are just way too up their own ass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, of course. But now to me, it's interesting because I try to figure out, like, why are they there, or why haven't they broken past this barrier, this entry to self kind of point. And to me, it's the challenge of, like, all right, they are the box that I'm trying to fit inside of. And so now I'm
maybe
trying
you can
to
make them learn something about themselves.
Well, and what can I fucking learn from trying to get into a box that's that tiny?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, that's part of the excitement that I get out of this adventure of trying to figure out how to describe art to somebody that has no reference point for it. And, like, love is one way to get by it, because especially the older you get, the bigger the impact of that relationship becomes to you. But then coming across to somebody that completely tears apart, like the banana example. When I mentioned the banana, you were like, oh, I can't understand this at all, Grant. Like, yeah. And I get that. I completely get that, because when I have family members and people that living in Cuba that are starving or unable to get a banana because the country's on lockdown and they can't produce enough of it or whatever, like, a banana for them is not something you sell. It's something you eat in order to be able to eat something else later on. And so I get that, but that is their reference point for the banana. The reference point of a person that can afford to spend $100,000 on a banana is very different. And to me, it's a journey of figuring out how to be aware of both sides of that scale and reach a point where both sides on both extremes can agree, simply because they are now aware that another side exists. And
give me that toy.
And that's why I do this, I guess.
I can't even, like, write down enough quotes of all the smart shit that Raphael just said. By the way,
it just comes forth.
I was just trying to keep up. I'm like, I need to remember these things. These are, well,
You know
what
the
I
really
think
cool
is
thing about this, Thomas,
Yeah.
I'm recording this, and you know it's gonna be
Oh yeah, I could go
public.
back. Yeah. But,
You can go back and just
yeah.
do
Watch it
all-
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then see how dumb we all look on video.
Well, the what I'm so stoked about I mean, this whole conversation itself, even if we're like self-containing it to this, talking about art, so much of this is applicable to like what we were talking. We touched on business and we touched on practice and all of these things, which are super, super applicable to just a business like Grant's, which is 3D, 3D Musketeers and doing 3D printing and all of these things. There's like I've always said, and I will say until the day I die, like everyone is so much closer together in doing what we do than we think we are.
Truth.
The
Like,
boundaries are
it's
mostly just artificial.
artificial. And that's the most frustrating thing to me, because when you get the right people in the room, you finally have the concept artist talking to the rigid engineer, that's when the coolest stuff happens.
Yep.
Because the moment that those two are willing to converse and, be part of each other's worlds and understand each other, or even if we're talking about cross-cultural barriers where one's trying to understand the other, vice versa, that's when the coolest shit happens. And talking about art as this form of love, you can also say that understanding, like from an artist perspective, say someone's really stuck in their ways of like all creative and I just don't understand those, damn engineers doing whatever the hell they do in science and who cares, whatever.
Well, that's why we say that we bridge the gap between engineers and business owners, right?
Well, yeah.
And
Right.
The bulk of it is the average engineer is not charismatic. And the reason they're not charismatic is you don't know how to talk their language. If you can talk in a language that makes sense to them, then dude, they light up like a Christmas tree or a Hanukkah bush or whatever.
That's but like, yeah, I mean, and yeah, that like it's the language of it, right? It's because in this I feel like I understood a lot of what Rafael was saying and learned a lot too, but I'm also sitting from a perspective of this is what I do every day. And so the things that he's saying are like, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. Like I get that right off the bat. Whereas like Grant sometimes will be like, what? I don't, but I think like, teaching each other that language. And I love the fact that you're, taking the time to think about how to tell people what and why and how art works for people and directed towards people that typically are like, it's pretty, like, I think that's time well spent.
Yep.
Well, it's like I can't help think about it because that's both like the double-edged sword, where the sharper the sword, the more you can fight, but the sharper the sword, the more it can cut you when you're using it. And so, like my head, I can't stop thinking about all these things, but I also get enjoyment out of it. So it's like it's like.
But that's your job, though, right? Your job is to not stop thinking about it.
Well, I made it my job, and so that's like a big difference too.
And see, this is a cool lesson on pursue your passion. Do you want to tell everyone why you actually moved out, or what I knew is your reason to moving out to Pittsburgh?
Well, like with what Thomas was saying earlier, where like what I was saying is applicable to other businesses as well. It's also how I've practiced, like everything that I'm talking about right now is a result of how I decided to do my life.
Preach.
Well, how to live, yeah. Because I just got tired of making the same stupid little mistakes and being in an environment where whatever success I achieved, I felt was being washed out by another problem. A big problem,
or this exact same issue.
Yeah, or 50 little other problems.
Right.
And so
Bailey.
And so I remember I was working at this job in a mailroom because I was in charge of like this huge corporation's mail sorting process, and I would get tens of thousands of pieces of mail every day to sort through, and I had to do it all by hand, and that I would have to do it within 2 hours. Because then I had to then distribute it, get this load of mail to send out and stuff. But anyways, I remember after doing this for 6 months, I was standing next to this envelope opener that opens up the envelopes because there's thousands of them. And I was doing that, and this voice in my head, like not even schizophrenic or anything, but this
Right.
voice that did not sound like anything I could have even imagined, or fooled myself into thinking that it was for me. Like this very deep voice that at the time I thought was like it scared me so much I thought it was like a demon or something. And I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, at least not anymore. And I heard it, and I'll never forget the words. It's like, Rafael, if you turn 27 and you're still working here, not only will you live this way, you will die this way, and you'll never ever achieve what you want. And it wasn't it wasn't asking me for my opinion. It was telling me the future, and the most concrete future if I stayed. And so that scared the shit out of me. Like I stopped sorting envelopes for like 15 minutes straight, and my coworkers were like just staring at me like, what's he doing? Because I couldn't move. I was just, that's how real it felt. Like being handed stone tablets, and the single commandment was written on there, and this was it. And so after that moment, I'm like, well, I got to get my shit together. For one, let me get out of this environment that makes me hear these voices. And so that was the first thing I did. As Grant was alluding to, I wanted to be a doctor. My goal up to that point was I've been fighting 6 years through the university system to just go through the MCAT, graduate, get everything I needed to go through medical school, and it was torture the entire time. And the level of passion that I've been expressing for art is the same level of passion I had attached to medicine and this desire to be a doctor. And because of that, I decided to do one thing that I had never done before. And I said, all right, instead of me projecting what my life goal is going to be a doctor, let me reflect on what I have lived from the past and have enjoyed from actual real experience. Let me look back as if I'm watching a movie and notice the moments where I actually laughed, notice the moments where I cried, notice the moments that have made me feel the way that I want to feel 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And I made a list of all those things. And that was the list that told me not what I wanted to choose as a career, but what I wanted to experience on a daily basis.
Yep.
And then the job from there, like I wasn't, like Grant was referenced at the beginning, it's like just getting started. Well, it's hard to just get started if you don't know where you're starting from. And so that was what got me to understand what the starting point for me was looking at what shit is currently in my life and what blessings are currently in my life. And let me just get rid of the shit, and the blessings will naturally appear as long as I'm not stepping on crap. And it worked. I moved here, and within the first year of setting myself up and stuff like that, I came to the realization, all right, now it's time, because I moved here for medical school. But then I realized after a year, holy fuck, I don't really want to go to medical school, because the lifestyle that I've encountered here is so ideal. This is the way I want to live and die. And then medical school became a dread. And that's when I had this epiphany of another demon come into my head and say, don't quit medical school. Don't admit it. Don't admit it. Don't admit it. Because to me, it was like saying no to a whole identity I had built for myself. And I finally got to the point in my life where something as big as that, I was able to say no to, and say, no, that's not who I am anymore. This is who I am now. And that's why I love art, because it helps me come to these understandings.
Bailey, don't be nasty.
And
Sorry.
No, you're good. And yeah,
Mainly our consistent guest that comes on every now and then.
Yes.
But no, this has been really interesting. You know, we do this podcast because we want to tell the world a different ways to make awesome. And I I think you really hit the nail on the head there, right? You make awesome, but you've transitioned from making your own awesome, being the photographer, to now making awesome for others by assisting in getting artists' art into the homes of their fans. Not just people with lots of commas, but people with a couple of commas that appreciate the art. And that's such a big deal because finding someone that will have the notoriety of a Picasso, of a Degas, it's not easily going to happen anymore in this modern world. So for artists to think that their art's just going to sell for $20 million is asinine. They have to build their brand, they have to build their following, and they have to have the right person to do it. So, Rafi, how can people find you? Now, we're going to put the two websites that you gave us, but how else can people find you? If they are an artist who has sales, do not reach out to Rafi. If you are like finger painting, please.
Unfortunately, don't reach out to me if you aren't living in Cuba. Because that's
Rafi, we've messed up. This podcast is in English.
No. No, it's my job to find them.
Fine, I was trying.
No, I apologize for pausing you there. It's that's one of the other things of being a business owner. That's the business side of
your target
of dealing with art. It's identifying your niche. And so
listen to that, inventors and people out there. Identify your niche. The entire community is not your niche, and stop thinking that way.
If you try to sell everything, you're going to sell nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might sell something, but you're never going to have a repeat customer. And for me, it's like with something as difficult to understand sometimes as art, especially being able to stand in front of something like the stuff that I deal with and recognize it for what it is, that takes a lot of time and that takes a lot of effort. And there are people that put that amount of time and that amount of effort into finding stuff like that. And my job is to simply show them, hey, we exist.
Yep.
And we're doing the work for you. And not only we're doing the work that you would normally take upon yourself to do in order to acquire the things that actually make you happy. We get enjoyment out of doing that work that you find frustrating. And then we get you what you want. And yeah, that's why, like, again, I apologize for your beautiful talk. But it's to be clear, like, we represent nationally famous Cuban artists. People that haven't been chosen by us because I think it's pretty or because it stimulates my conceptualist mindset. No, these are the people that have become famous because the people that they represent made them famous and decided this artist speaks for me. Because art in Cuba is not the same art anywhere else in the world. Because like here in the United States, when we make art is a very individual thing. We make art that comes from how we feel about our own experiences. Artists in Cuba is a whole different beast. It's a very old way of looking. The job of an artist is to represent the time period of a community and the emotions and experiences of a community, as well as predict where the future is going to take that community towards.
I love it.
And
I love it.
And so that's why I deal with Cuban artists, and that's why people love Cuban art, and that's what they seek out of Cuban art. I can't concentrate or show the beauty of it unless I concentrate on it entirely, instead of not being niched, like a lot of people think they ought to be. So to answer your question, how to contact me, you can go to the website, galeriacaiman.com, and which Grant said that he'll share. You can email me at rafael@galeriacaiman.com, or you can send me a text at my personal number.
Do not give out your personal cell phone number on a public. Don't do it.
No, I'm gonna do it.
Rafi,
I'm gonna do it.
Rafi, give a Google Voice number Rafi.
No.
Rafi.
All right, fine. I just that's the artist in me. I want to have this.
I know it is, Rafi, but the internet is full of really mean people, and some of them might decide that your phone number is going to be a problem.
I'll take your number after though, Rafa.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I'll give it to you. Thomas, you can have my number, Thomas. Is that okay,
Yes. You could give your number
Okay.
to another.
Yeah, you have
I
Grant's
understand.
Haley, give me that toy.
So yeah, you can contact me through there, and
Toy.
I'm willing to answer any questions. If you're the kind of person that found this conversation interesting, but you don't really understand art still, or are interested in understanding something that you've never had a desire to understand before, I'm there to take you the whole way, and I'll be patient. And because I was at that place before. I didn't understand conceptualism. I used to think that banana was stupid as shit. Even at my point now, like I thought, like that was
Banana is
most
stupid. I'm sorry, it's stupid.
Well, I thought it was stupid as shit, but then I realized it can be stupid as shit and also the most amazing art piece ever at the same time.
They're not mutually
Yeah.
exclusive.
That I was actually about to say it can be
Well,
dumb as hell.
Walmart has been ripping
but-
that off for years at very reasonable prices.
Oh, the banana selling thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, and so it's like, yeah, it's a journey, and when people decide to take up art, when people decide to become art collectors, it's not something you. Being an art collector is something you can become, but it takes time to learn it. And it's not just something of like owning 50 pieces in your house and saying, "Oh, I'm an art collector."
You gotta
No.
feel it.
Well, it's not, and it's not just feeling. Your art collection has to say something about you, and something that you want to be said about you, and because you don't really want things. You don't want people coming into your house, looking at your walls and looking at all this art, and saying, "I don't want to be around this person."
Mm-hmm.
Because
Unless that's your plan. I mean,
unless
Yeah.
that's your plan.
and
Hey, we can do
that's
it.
the great thing about art. And
Yeah.
art will help you make awesome. Rafi helps you get that art to make awesome. And that's why, Rafi, you make a perfect guest. And for anyone that has enjoyed this, Rafi was teasing potentially starting a podcast. So let us know. Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot for that, because if you can do more episodes like that are just very cathartic, it's very introspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe this is something that people outside of the maker community need to hear, because especially small business owners, entrepreneurs, from someone you've been through hell and back. I know your story, and I mean, I know some of it at least, and it has not been easy for you. So I would listen to your podcast. I mean, I would, and I don't understand half the shit you'd be talking about, but I would tell you, I would get a better understanding for art. I get a better valuation for what art is worth to me, because you said people love having art on their walls. I don't have a single I have one piece of art on my wall. Do picture discs classify as art? Because then I have 3 pieces on my walls.
You tell me.
It's yours, right?
I don't know.
It's because you haven't found the right shit yet, Grant.
So, all right, Thomas, I need a 24 by 36 of the cat. So I'm gonna print that and hang it on the wall. That's gonna be my art cat.
We can do that.
Anyways, thank you all for listening so much. Keep making awesome out there, and welcome to 2021. If you haven't called your loved ones, freaking do it. Okay, if they made it through 2020, everything is going good. But please call them, wish them a happy new year, let them know you love them. And if you are looking to make awesome stuff, please reach out to 3D Musketeers. We help you go from art to part any way possible, whether you are making bath bomb masters, or you're making parts for Peloton, or parts for food packaging. That's what's actually been being made in the background the whole time, if you are watching us on YouTube. But anyways, stay safe out there, everyone. Socially distance, wear your masks, and as always, keep making awesome. Take care.